Check, check. Can you hear me? For some reason, I can't hear you, Doc.
That's better. I had the wrong mic in. I'm sorry. Let me tell Elias. Okay, we'll do it again. So yeah, apparently I had my earbuds in, um, and so that's why you couldn't hear me. But now I got my regular device in,
Sounds
and
great.
okay, and now Elias is here. And if you have a PDF that goes with that delta hedging thing, or you want, or just whatever you want to talk about to the people for a few minutes, that's fine.
Of course. Yeah, maybe I can send you the full PDF after. But essentially, I think this is taken from our YouTube video, the long webinar we did like a
Right.
week ago. Yeah. So essentially, is there a particular topic you want to discuss?
Yeah. I'd like to start with basic delta hedging and to quick get to gamma. To quick get to gamma and just the real basics of um, market makers, long and short gamma, how it shows up in the platform, what kind of response we could get, and then switch to charm because a lot of people just seem to get turned around when it comes to end of the day charm, where market makers are long or short and what to expect.
Correct. So it all comes down to essentially what position holds the market maker. And something that needs to be taken into consideration is that whether market makers hold calls or puts, the hedging adjustments they need to make are going to be pretty much the same. Uh, what matters the most is what inventory of options market makers hold, whether they're long or short options, regardless if there are calls or there are puts. Um, Essentially, just to put things into perspective, there's gamma and charm, which track essentially the change in delta exposure of an option contract. For gamma, it tracks the change when the price moves, and charm tracks the change in delta when times moves forward. So essentially, they both work in tandem because time always moves forward, and also gamma is going to tell you what will be the hedging response if the price moves up or down. So often people are going to ask me, which one should you be looking at? The answer is both. In essence, it all comes down to having proper positioning, and as people here may already know, we don't use open interest here. We actually use real data, real option positioning data, directly sourced from exchanges, and this essentially removes all the uncertainty whether a contract has been bought or sold. You have the pretty much the authority telling you who bought the contract and who sold the contract. So we're able to really assess the overall market maker positioning data, the true market maker inventory of options. And here displayed on this chart from Doc is essentially the market maker option position. I think this is for all contracts combined, calls and puts.
Yes, yes. And
And
let me guess. So you notice he says it doesn't matter if they're calls or put. What matters is if they're net long or net short at a strike, and that dictates the hedging response. Which is why I always just use that breakdown by strike thing, or look at it here.
yeah,
And a word about open interest, because he said something that's very important. I was actually chatting with a new subscriber earlier about, well, how, he was asking, how do you know, whatever. And he was saying, well, he looks at open interest. Well, look at open interest and volume. And I was explaining to him that just because it says there's 5,000 or 10,000 open doesn't mean the market maker has to hedge 5,000 or 10,000. He could have none there. So if you want to explain that a little bit.
yeah, correct. So essentially, the option market is a zero sum game, just like any market. For every buyer, you need a seller, right? And the open interest only tells you how many open contracts are open between the two entities, between the buying party and the selling party. So it doesn't tell you who owns what, right? And essentially, we have a pool of different type of customers. We have firms, we have traders like you and I, we have different institutions, and then we have in the middle we have the market makers, who are essentially the middleman in transactions. So these market maker may stay stuck with some residual positions. Their goal is essentially buying low and selling high, right? Buying at the bid, selling at the ask. Of course, they can profit from their residual positions. That's another part of the story. But their goal is essentially to be the most efficient as possible, buying low and selling high. However, they
So
get
they
stuck.
don't want to. So they don't want to be stuck owning 5,000 puts to 6,500.
That's right, because options decay. They have a lot of risk. So their goal is not to hold option positions, and when they do hold, in other words, they always almost always end up with large residual positions. Well, they need to protect themselves, right? And there's different risks they need to protect themselves against. Option may change in value for a lot of different reasons, change in price, change in vol, time decay. But there's one risk, which is the change in underlying price, uh, that can be hedged pretty easily, right? If the price goes up, if the price goes down, we can measure their delta exposure and we can understand how much their delta is going to change and how much money they're going to be buying or winning or losing depending on the directional move. And as a market maker, the most important thing is not to lose money. uh, the firms, pretty much all firms, have very systematic approaches to hedging, and what they aim is to have no directional exposure. So they don't want to be exposed to upside, they don't want to be exposed to downside. What they want is just to remain neutral in their risk exposure. If the price goes up, if the underlying price goes up, they don't want to be losing money. If the underlying price goes down, they don't want to be losing money. And what they do for that is that they buy and sell, they delta hedge. And generally for the SPX, the primary instrument is futures, ES futures. So they'll be buying and selling futures to rebalance their portfolio, just to make sure that, for example, if they're long delta with their option portfolio, or they're going to be shorting ES just to rebalance and bring that delta exposure back to zero. So this is
So let me
one.
let me stop. So if they're long delta, so here's market maker long, they're going to be selling into those moves based on what their exposure is and based on how close we are.
Yeah, in a sense. So right, hedging comes in two different steps. So the first step is, for example, you're a market maker and I'm a customer. Let's say I sell you a call, you become long the call. So immediately you need to hedge, right? That immediate new position you've added into your option portfolio. But as a trader, we all know that the value of option can change dramatically, and that delta exposure that you've initially hedged is going to be changing very fast if the price moves up as the time progresses. And this is where the continuous delta hedging comes into play. And this is why we're looking at Greeks like gamma and charm. It's
Let
not
me
to
let me stop at, let me stop you there and explain it. For example, if you bought a 20 delta call out of the money,
yeah,
roughly at the expected move, 20 delta, so market makers have to short, or if you buy it, if you sell it, then they buy it, then they have to short whatever the amount is, 2/10 to be neutral. They have to short, if you buy 100, they have to short 20 E-mini, roughly. Let's just keep that, to keep it simple. Suddenly
yeah,
it moves up and it's a 50 delta. Well, now they're too short. Now they're too long,
exactly,
rather, so they have to sell again.
exactly. So they need to continuously change, their hedge as the market condition. Bless you.
Thank you.
And essentially that's right. And this is the example with one single contract, right? But the reality is that they're going to be holding millions of contracts. And the delta exposure of all of these contracts is going to be changing all along, with respect to price, with respect to time, with respect to IV. These are the three primary reasons, the three primary factors that influence option pricing in general. So and these hedging requirements can somehow be predicted. We know time is going to move forward. We know that if the price went up, it went up, right? So we can make projections and understand, okay, well, if the price moves, let's say 5 points, how much delta they're going to need to sell or buy, right? And this is where, with respect to price, we look at gamma, and with respect to time, we look at charm.
And so here's a charm chart. So walk us through for a minute here what we're seeing and how to think about this chart. And also, a lot of people ask about these numbers.
Yeah,
And some people might not even know about the numbers, but if they do, they ask about the numbers.
yeah. If you want, you can go on the little settings thing on the top right of this heat map. Go all the way down, scroll down, and then select color bar visibility. Check it to on. Toggle it to on. Yeah. Yeah. So here we're gonna have the
Oh,
values.
okay. Look at that.
Yeah, we should add them on the tooltip. This will be added in the upcoming update.
After all these years, I've seen some people had. I have no idea how they got it. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. So in essence, see this chart as understanding what will be the passive wind, the passive hedging requirement of market makers as time is moving forward. And
And so,
delta
what
move.
does the blue mean? So we see
Yeah.
this shade of blue is 100. What does that mean?
Yeah, so let's say it's 100, right? That means that every 5 minutes, the delta exposure of market makers is going to be dropping by 100. And this is, option delta. So uh, every 5 minutes, they're going to have to essentially buy 200 ES E-mini contracts just to rebalance their option portfolio.
When it's blue.
So Yeah, when it's blue. So it depends on the magnitude of the color and the value. The darker or the more intense the shade is, uh, the more intense the hedging requirement is going to be. So sometimes, most of the day, we're gonna have very mild charm influence, but nonetheless, it kind of helps understand where these passive flows may be leading us into the upcoming trading session. Sometimes there's very light option positioning, and the swing is very mild. And there are days where there are huge option positions, and the influence is very very large, and we get pulled towards particular strikes because of that.
Now, as you can see here, the color on this heat map is pale. So this is
Yeah.
telling you right now there's not a lot going on here. And then if we look at the breakdown by strike, when I see this kind of fishbone pattern, fish skeleton pattern, spinal cord pattern, long short, long short, long short, there's really no real particular concentrated requirement. They're going to have to buy if we go here, but sell if we go there, but buy if we go here and sell if we go there. So there's
Correct.
really no clear pattern.
That's right. And also for this particular session, um, here, I don't know which expiration you got on, but the overall positions are not huge. The largest position in that range is not even 2,000 contracts.
Right, right, right.
So this explains also why the heat map is very pale. The gamma heat map is just, there's not a lot of options, and essentially um, price will be more free to navigate um through these tracks through a very pale gamma heat map.
Hold on. Somebody asked a question that's one of my, not because of the question, but because of the way the gamma has been packaged or marketed. So the question was, how do we know if we're in a positive or negative gamma regime? The way I always like to explain it is gamma is local. So here today, we had negative, market makers were negative gamma. They were short options. Customers were long calls over here.
Hmm.
It's not a regime. Over here, they were market makers were long. Over here, market makers were long. Over here, market makers were short. And
Correct.
so tomorrow, if I go back to market makers position, so hold on. So today, oh, we're in a negative regime. Tomorrow, no regime. There's been a regime change. There's been a revolution. And so you have to, you don't have to do anything. It helps to think locally. What's going on near my strike, near where we are, not regime. You have a few words to say about that? Maybe different
Yeah.
way of
So
explaining it?
essentially, you can look at regime, just looking at this heat map, right? You can just kind of understand the broad coloring. So, for instance, this particular heat map, which is how tomorrow's heat map is currently shaped, you can see a very pale blue environment. So, for most of the trading session, for the most of the trading range, there's going to be very low positive gamma exposure. Just this is the essentially like the direct answer to your question. Just look at the
That's a
color.
good way to do it. Yeah, that's a good way to answer it.
Just look at the color around the current spot price, right? Color of the gamma heat map. It's If it's very dark blue, we're in the strong positive gamma regime. If it's very pale blue, what it means is that it's going to be a low positive gamma regime. If the gamma exposure is red, around the current spot price at the time of the candlestick, then the SPX will be in a negative gamma regime. So generally, we see some more volatile action. Um, so yeah, and these environments can change dramatically during a trading session. If new trades are opened, if new large option positions are taken, the environment can change based on those new trades coming in during the trading session.
Okay, can you take this question? And I know the answer, but I'm going to let you answer it. Uh, this is an early Globex, so will the heat map increase throughout the Globex prior to the real time open?
Correct. So new trades might be coming in. Well, they usually come in during the evening, uh, and also before the market open. Usually, right at the market open, we see some large trades being taken and changing the landscape pretty rapidly. But essentially, the heat map is a projection. So this is the current state of the option positioning. And what we do is that we look into the end of the trading session to see how the gamma will change as time moves forward. But as of now, as of the current option positioning, the overall gamma landscape is pretty mild, and generally, the SPX can move wider in such conditions. It just needs the catalyst, and ranges can be there's not going to be much gamma to suppress any move.
And what we typically see in the overnight session is there may be an initial adjustment if we move, and because remember, market makers come into the session hedged, so they're neutral. And so if we're moving around, if we approach a large strike, they might have to sell a little bit or buy a little, but they're not very active unless we're approaching a large strike, from what I understand. There's also different, what's the word I'm looking for? Risk protocols, whatever, for the overnight session. If I'm, you correct me if I'm wrong. And so there's not going to be a lot of hedging required unless we get near a number. Now, we get near a number in the overnight session, there still might be a response, but there's not going to be enough new SPX options positions to really change the landscape much.
That's right. Usually, we don't see huge flows overnight. There are some exceptions, of course. Unless there's major news coming in at night, we don't see the landscape change very much overnight. Generally, after the market open, this is where the big trades coming. Um, so yeah, in a sense, this is a good, pretty much a good understanding of how the landscape will be looking like tomorrow morning, in essence.
Uh, let
So
me let me try to explain this question, and maybe you could have a shot at it. Okay, so the person says, I thought in negative gamma we have big expected moves and market make will not revert, but today was very range bound. Okay, so let me go back to today. So again, in negative gamma, market makers at the end of the day, they approach this negative gamma area, and that's what pulled us up. Through most of the day, gamma was positive. You can remember this changes throughout the day with positioning. Through in the morning, there was large calls sold above at 75 and 70 on top and 25 and 20 on bottom. And then the rest of it was just trading back and forth. It was a lot of trading back and forth.
yeah, indeed, just like you said, gamma is very local, especially with zero DT options. The gamma gets very concentrated near the strikes as we approach the end of the trading session. Doc, can you pull a heat map, like a dashboard with like a gamma heat map and a charm heat map next to it,
A
please?
gamma heat map and a what?
And a charm heat map next to it. I don't know if you have a dashboard set up like this.
I think I do. I think I copied yours. Hold on.
Yeah, there you go. So, and you can rewind back in time just so that we can get a good view. Or this is correct, actually. This can do the trick. So essentially, here, what you can see, you get both views, right? You get the gamma landscape on the left, so you're able to understand what will be the hedging response of market makers as the price changes. So in this morning session, earlier in the session, we were moving upwards towards this high gamma environment. And you can see that the price movement, the price change was
So, okay, so he asked about negative gamma, but and we were in,
we were
you
still in the
know,
positive gamma at the time, right?
right. So
So
here we are. Here's earlier in the day.
maybe put 10 a.m. just so that we're near the
What time?
near.
How do I know what time is 10 a.m.?
Can you
Uh,
click on the red time? On
the
the red
red
time,
time. Okay.
or just click on the time itself. Yeah, and
Oh,
then
okay.
go to 10 a.m.
Again, through all this time, I never know how to use this. Okay. I'm gonna randomly pick whichever one happens to be handy. Where's 10? What happens?
Maybe when the market,
Okay.
yeah, there you
10,
go.
20. Okay.
Yeah,
Done.
that's cool.
Okay.
So you see here the price was actually moving upwards and it was kind of plateauing, facing the very high positive gamma environment. So at the time, Charm was supportive, and we had this initial upward movement. We were in the blue environment, and we had this initial upward movement, and then we were banging into this very high positive gamma environment, which kind of helped suppress the upward price movement. Um, then price went down. Of course, we can fast forward into the session using the time selector. But essentially, Charm turned suppressive. So we had this negative environment with the negative gamma environment, which kind of helped price move more rapidly. And at the same time, we had the suppressive charm. So suppressive charm was essentially pushing us towards this positive gamma flip, which provided support. Underneath, you can notice that gamma transitions from a negative to a positive environment. And there, market makers switch from buying and selling with the price moves to buying and selling against the price moves. So at the same time, we have Charm pushing us down, and then uh, we get a positive gamma flip kind of supporting us, kind of sticking the SPX price uh, in between two positive gamma areas. And essentially, we just slowly drifted down inside this suppressive charm environment for the rest of the session.
So, good question here. Can you explain how to spot when the market might stall, grind, rip, or dump? And I kind of talk about this a lot in my notes. I mention avoid, and I wish I could go. Well, let me see. With you here, just as long as I can get my platform back to the way I need it, well, when the time comes. Now, how do I bring this back to the way it was, say, in the morning?
Uh,
I have to put if I
yeah,
want
you
to.
select the 0 DT.
See, I never do this backwards thing. Okay, so select 0 DTE, and then I go here. Okay, there we go. And if I want to go, perfect. Let's go to 920 before we opened. And this is going to answer the question. Before we opened, how do we know if what's going to happen? Before we opened, it's 65.45. So this is a potential stall if we're coming from above, from below, or a potential buy if we're coming from this direction. Okay, market makers hedge against. And we have this void up here. So there's a path up here towards 70, 75, but we have this pushing down. So this seemed to say, well, it's going to be hard to fight through here. Maybe we'll get up to here. When I see something like this, I see a path from 45 down, market maker long, market maker short rather. From here, quick path down to 40. Market makers are long. They're going to hedge in this direction. Then a little bit more, they're going to hedge there. We also know that as it goes down, the size of this bar is likely to grow from people buying, but we know the gamma is going to grow even if it's the same side. And so by looking at the shape where the positives are and looking at what's between them, is there a void or is there something like this where there's not much room to move? Or from here, are we going in, from here, are we going up into this big clump of positive gamma where it's going to take a lot to get through that? And that's how you tell if it's going to rip or dump or stall. Did that answer the question? I didn't get an answer. Do you ever have anything you want to add to that? A different way of looking at it? Okay, good. And let me, the
So
yes, gamma is switching, but really the gamma isn't switching. The market maker's response to what they have to do um, based on the hedging. So here, this gamma isn't switching to negative. It's always negative. It's just if we're far away from it, it doesn't matter. Go ahead.
So yeah, essentially the heat map tells you what is the global environment, and the breakdown by strike is going to help you kind of pinpoint exactly where that gamma is coming from. So if you want to have the global picture, a global understanding of uh, the overall gamma landscape, you got to look at the heat map. The heat map is taking all the option in the market maker option positioning, like all the option, all expiration, all strikes. And what we do, we calculate the gamma of each contract and we kind of add it up together and project it as what you see as a heat map. Uh, so this is like an everything view. It's like like Doc likes to call it the MRI of the overall gamma landscape. So this you're able to understand the hedging response, the complete hedging response of all the contracts combined. If you want to see the specific 0DT option position and the contribution of each contract, then you would look at the breakdown by strike. So when market makers are long options, expect, for example, this contract, right? It's a very, very large, long market maker option position. You would expect that level to act as a support and resistance. Whenever we get a stack of market maker short options, these are acceleration areas where price can essentially navigate more easily up until the next node, the next area where we have a lot of market maker long options. So essentially, you can see where we have clear stacked, you know, region of consecutive strikes with negative or positive market maker positions, and use them to kind of navigate through these strikes in a very fast manner. So,
So
for
now
example,
look at how the landscape changed. Suddenly, below 65, we have all these market maker short. We
yeah,
have a fast path right down to 25, kind of near where the low of the day was. We kind of came in here. So
exactly.
this told you what was going to happen, bro. It told you.
Exactly. So this is telling you you might face resistance at 65. And then if we reverse, there's going to be a clearer, quicker path all the way to this overall longer gamma on the right side, right under at 25, right under, yeah. So moving through this negative, these stacked, I like to refer to these as stacked option positions
Stacked. Yep.
or like clusters. So we had a cluster of market maker short options, and essentially we tend to navigate through these more easily up until the other, see them as baseball. How do you call them? Uh, like the pillows. Oh my god, I have the French word.
Tell us the French word.
uh, yeah, whatever. See them as safe spots, essentially, where there's gonna be potential support or resistance. So navigating through these market maker shorts, clustered option position is like a clear path all the way to the next cluster of market maker long options.
like a trampoline.
Yeah, in a sense, kind of a.
Let me see what does this person, what Laura say? More like spot when gamma switch happens. So the spot where price is traveling from positive gamma to negative gamma. So, and you could say, I mean, here we happen to have a really nice clean switch. Often it's more like, this kind of thing, long, short, where it's not a clean switch. Here it's a switch. Once we get below here, we're pretty much going down here. And, you know, we saw that in price today. Look what happened. I mean, we kind of went straight down. Yeah, a little up and down, but once we got into that negative gamma, we just kind of went right down. And then, of course, locally people bought and sold options. And so, what Elias pointed out before, now let's just pick this hypothetically. Um, Over here, there's 1,500 puts. See, 15, 5, 9, whatever. People can come in and buy and sell that many, a couple of big trades, and that's gone. A couple of big trades, and it switches from long, to short, whatever. So the 30 calls, they started buying these 30 calls later in the day. Right now, market makers are short these 30 calls. At the end of the day, look how the size of the 30 calls, suddenly there's 40,000, there's 4,000 contracts there. That's what made me make that crazy trade that I talked about on TV, on YouTube. We saw this buying keep building up here. And this was when we were down like below 20, and they kept buying these. There's your path up.
Yeah, that's right.
And so there's like the science, the quant part, and the intuition part, the art part of kind of being able to see the path. And so the switch happens when we move or travel through an area.
Yeah, I like to use this breakdown by strike to identify these clustered option positions, in tandem with the heat map. The heat map is like the global vision of, all the contracts combined. And using it in tandem with the breakdown by strike, just like you have here, is really the way I personally like to proceed. I mean, this is the personal preference.
Yeah, this is your dashboard.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. So this is what I like to use when I trade on a daily basis. Um, Doc, I would be glad to join you more often in these little sessions. Just hit me up on Discord.
Okay.
I'll be glad to join you on a more frequent.
Yeah. Thanks for stopping in, and I, I appreciate your time because I know behind the curtain there's all kinds of code and whatever, and I don't even know what's going on with coding up the new whatever and scrubbing the data and
Yeah, and
siloing it. Who I don't even know what the words mean, but I know you're doing all kinds of stuff.
yeah, all kinds of things. There are miles between having a functional code and system for your local trades and having a full-on platform. So there's a lot of things that uh, there's a lot of things going on in the background. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, getting it to do it for yourself with the data is one thing. To get it stored wherever in AWS, wherever cloud, and getting it sent out, that's a whole other story.
Yeah, and I mean, we're willing to do the work, and hopefully provide the best experience for our users. We're constantly improving and working on the product, so some features and updates are on the way. So hopefully you guys will enjoy it, and we'll listen to your feedback. That's for sure, just like usual.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Of course, I appreciate. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for coming.
Take care.
Um, okay, take care. So you get a cheat code. I give you a cheat code every day. I mean, the basic cheat code, and it's in. Maybe I'll have to do a better job organizing the Discord. Not maybe, but the cheat codes are all in here. As I think of them, I write them up. Gamma Charm cheat card. What I see, what dealers must do. Uh, Gamma Rock Omega's hedging cheat card deck. I mean, it's all here, and maybe one day we could like kind of randomly pick one, or maybe not so randomly. How about any one of you go through what I have in resources and quick reference because I might not have labeled them exactly correctly. Um, Quick reference, I don't have as much stuff. This was really supposed to meant to be quick reference. So high gamma zone, market makers are long. Hedge is mean reverting, sells rallies, buys dips. Acts like a gravity wall, slows down price. Back in the good old days when 6,000 was a number. Found their major strikes usually, 6,000, 6,500. Breakouts here often require volatility spike. So here's a pretty good cheat map card right here. See, I know I did it. Gamma flip. With the what the visual gets you jumbled. Okay. Um, when you say the visual gets you jumbled, you mean okay, so the visual I typically show mostly throughout the day is this visual. So now how do I get this to reset? See, I let them leave without, let's hope that this, okay, I think that resets. Let me go to tomorrow. Okay, the view from option desk. This view, so the two main views I like to look at are this view, and this view is telling us it's a mess. So today the view is a lot clearer. What this view is telling us, so first thing you do is look left, look right. Left is market maker long, right is market maker short. Now this view isn't really telling us anything, unfortunately, because there's no real pattern. We know that if we get up here, it's mostly market maker long, so the selling, we shouldn't get there. We also know, yes, choppy, tomorrow's a mess. But what we can say is if over 65.45, right, 65.50, we have market maker long here at 65.50, get pulled here. From 65.50, there's really nothing much in between except for 65.70, a little bit, 335 calls, nothing. That'll get bought up in 3 seconds. So from here, we have a potential magnet up at 75.80. Now, it doesn't mean we get to the magnet. As we go up, it accelerates, but you know that if you ever bought an out of the money option, near the money option, and when you start going in that direction, it starts making more and more money. Well, that means if it's making more and more money, market makers are buying, buying, buying more too. But then what happens when price slows up even for 5 minutes, 2 minutes, and goes down 3 points? Suddenly you were up $400, now you're up $185, and suddenly you're down. And suddenly, when suddenly you're down, market makers flip from buying to support the move negative delta, negative gamma, to selling. Whatever they bought on the way up, then they get to dump on the way down just as fast. And then we have just as fast of a round trip back to here. Yep, you lose money. So if you think of this as an option, you're long. You're making money, market makers are buying. When we stall, slow down, and you potentially start losing money, guess what? Market makers are starting to sell. And so that's kind of another way to think about it. If you were in that position, what would be happening to your P&L? Because that's what market makers are going to be doing. And the same thing with a credit spread. So let's just pretend you're short a credit spread over here at 65.40. As we go down, you're losing more and more money. So if you're losing more and more money, market makers have to buy to hedge it out. Um, Mostly during the trading day, I look at options depth. I also look at spot gamma. I haven't looked at in a long time. I look at him once or twice a week. I like I like his notes. Uh, I like Brent's notes. Brent's notes and overall coverage are good. Um, I used to subscribe to every toy he had. For example, I didn't find the hero very helpful. I found it after the fact it looked great, but during the day it doesn't really tell me anything. For me, what I also sometimes will look at, and actually I wanted to look at this. Um, I look at something simple like bar charts, and actually I wanted to look at this. So let's take a peek together. There, there was about 1 million VIX calls traded today, and I want to see where they were. 1 million VIX options. We don't know necessarily calls. So here's 20 strikes. If we go 50 strikes, that'll give us a better idea. So here, this is just in the volume, just in the September expiration, and in the October expiration. There you go. 95,000 contracts up at 50. Now, that doesn't really matter. But it makes a nice headline, right? Good clickbait. 95,000 contracts, VIX calls were bought. Oh my God. Doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything. Probably sold or probably, some mathematical thing against a book. Did they do anything in the Novembers? 60s, way out of the money stuff. Doesn't really mean anything. So, but to answer your question, I'll look at something like this because it's a good tool that gives me, raw data. I'll look at, so sometimes I might look at a mentor Q. I don't really look at it that much for gamma. I look at it more for, I want to look at term structure. It gives me a nice, easy way to look at the VIX term structure. It's going to be noisy, like the 5 days ago and today. That's going to be noisy. I'll look at it to get a peek at term structure. But I find more and more uh, the smile to look at how inverted the smile is on, uh, on the smirk they call it, or the Nike whoosh. So I'll look at that. But truthfully, I get more out of looking at. And that's why I was saying I was talking to Elias before. Different people's eyes process information differently, or think differently, or brain process differently. I look at this. This tells me a ton. This tells me VVIX, and now it tells me because I made it. Here I see VVIX spike to over 100, and while VVIX was spiking, out of the money tails were bought more than one standard deviation skew was bought, 3 standard deviations was bought, so that's more disaster insurance. I see the 9-day spiked proportionally more, the 9-day VIX spiked proportionally more than the 1-day VIX, and I mean the regular VIX. And so those are things that I might look at. Your VVIX is 100 again. Yep, over 100 again. Here we were cruising down here at 90, and then suddenly we're at 100. And my famous VIX-VVIX ratio went from kind of a normal level to spike. Now this is interesting because VVIX went up, but VIX didn't go up. VIX went up a little bit, VVIX went up a lot. So that means one of two things. Either VIX is wrong or VVIX is wrong, and people bought insurance ahead of the CPI. It also tells us, remember, VIX is demand for VIX options. If people are buying VIX puts, that's also going to make VVIX go up, but not make VIX go up. There's a lot of people betting vol is going to be at 15 in November. There's VIX put buying. Yeah, TDIX ramped at the end of the day, hedging for CPI, exactly. And I love seeing that because unless that volatility gets realized, unless we go down enough for that to make money, that evaporates. That evaporates. What about Gamma Edge? Okay, thank you for mentioning Gamma Edge. Gamma Edge is another one, and I use Gamma Edge a lot. I used to use it more. Now, Gamma Edge, so first of all, if I'm looking at an individual stock, Gamma Edge is going to be my go-to. Let's start with that right there. So if I want to see what's going on with NVIDIA, because we know NVIDIA has a big weight, or if I want to trade it, or for whatever reason, I'm going to look right here in Gamma Edge. We'll leave it like this. Actually, invert. And I'll probably just want to look at these two. And here you have the Gamma Edge transition zone. And here we're in call dominated, so it should go up in kind of an orderly way. With something like NVIDIA, we kind of know, and here's where the intuitive part goes. We kind of know that you have to be crazy to be selling 175 calls in NVIDIA. Right? And nobody's selling at the money calls in NVIDIA and thinking they're going to make money. Unless it's against, shares or something, but basically this is speculator, especially, forget that. especially for Friday. No one is, so this is all buy. I have 115,000 calls at 175. Those are buyers. And we're accelerating through that. And this is kind of, so that's what it tells me. And it tells you, where the GEX supply zone is. So that's kind of where we start getting in the money, where we start getting a nice lift. The GEX demand zone is, that's where it might start to break down. So, and as you know, you've seen me do it a lot. I'll do VIX on Gamma Edge all the time. I like looking at VIX on Gamma Edge. It's a nice clean view, and you see we're put dominated in VIX. A lot of the buying now, TDEX is not buying VIX puts, but a lot of the VVIX can be demand for puts. Not saying all of it is, but some of it is. And so it can be kind of tricky and deceptive, which is why I can't wait for I've been bugging him pretty much since he started, even before he launched the platform. I knew what he was doing. I knew he was getting SPX and VIX data. I said, do them both. It's easy for me to say because I don't have to do anything. He obviously concentrated on SPX, which is understandable. And only now is getting around to figuring out how to do all this for VIX. Because VIX is a different animal. Like he said, VIX is a calculation. It's kind of a different animal and it acts different. And then, in the heat map, you have the volatility and you have all the Greeks coded into it. And coding that into VIX is kind of different because VIX, the volatility is in the calls, not the puts. You don't have put call parity. So it's very different animal. I don't know how he's going to code it. I don't care about a heat map. I just want to see something like I just want to see something like that for VIX. That's all I want to see. Show me positions for VIX, and I'm good. I can figure out what's going to happen from there. Okay, 8:35. I've gone over time. Um, for future webinars, if you guys can maybe write out a few questions, maybe with a screenshot of something, um, maybe look through some of the resource channels and just pick one or two things that you'd like for us to talk about. Complete Greek Guide. There it is, 3 parts. It's here. Now, you might need for me to talk through this, which I understand Greek workflow. I mean, it's here. The quick reference. This isn't such a quick one, but it's kind of everything you needed to know about the Greeks and were afraid to ask. That's right here in the channel. High gamma zone, above support. Okay. Yeah, yeah. I'm glad. I was doing something with him beforehand, and so I twisted his arm to come join. Especially considering what's going on. These guys are like coding like crazy people. I don't even know what that means, but they're doing whatever they're trying to do to try to get the platform working. To get all the new features launched. Okay, I'm gonna run. I'll put the goatees to bed. Oh, thank you. And let me. Do you need a link? I can always throw a link in. I think it's pretty good, if I say so myself. And that's the thing I like to hear most of all. That's the thing I like to hear most of all, that it's a lifesaver. And that's the feedback I've gotten from a lot of people. And even before I launched the service, people were saying that. And yeah, part of me launching it, it's nice to make the money, but it's not a huge money maker. I make a lot more trading than I do with this. But it's helped a lot of people. It's exposed a lot of people to the daily plan, and it's people are like making money or not losing money, which is, the first rule of trading is don't lose. If you get used to how I present my heat map, and that's the other thing I've encouraged people to do your own heat map, not your own heat map, excuse me, roadmap. Look at what's there and write your own roadmap, even if it's a little bit wrong. Here's the WHOP sign up. We got a special going on there. We, me, whatever. I have someone doing admin and stuff for me. I have Substack. Same thing. I don't think I have the same special pricing there. Truthfully, I don't even know how to. The thing with WHOP is it's more flexible in terms of pricing. If I want to make you a deal, if I want to do specials on WHOP, I can. It's much easier to go in there on the back end. Substack on the back end is a pain, and lately it's been okay, but there were times when people tried to buy something, cancel, not cancel, and credit cards, payment refused, and all kinds of funny things happen. They try to upgrade, downgrade, and they can't do it. WHOP, all that back end stuff works better. That's the main reason I even started WHOP for the back end. And I'll make sure that people who subscribe to WHOP, once I figure out how to do it, can also see the Substack and vice versa. But it's going to be the same thing, copy and paste it in two places. It's not going to be any content, won't be any different. It'll just be in two different places. Okay. Wait, an error occurred on YouTube. This may be temporary. Try again. Whoa. Let's try this again. We don't want that. There it is, WHOP. I'm not sure what happened here. All right, I'm going to go put the goatees to bed. Thank you all for joining. Questions, put them in there. And I'm going to make a daily plan channel where I'm going to ask you people to write your daily plan. It could be 3 lines, 30 lines, a chart, whatever. And I know that when I got challenged to do that, that helped me. All right. And that was Gamma Edge that did that. Good night. Good night, everyone. Thank you for attending.